Next slide. This is the print the image that I actually sent out to be printed. And you can see it's very delicate because it is now going to be 8 feet tall by 6 feet wide. But in this image, you can't really see the detail that much. But you can follow by placement where these things are. And here's our little heart-shaped area. So once I get to this point, I've decided I like the composition, I like the darks and lights, there's a dynamic to it that I think will make a good painting.
What size is it when you send it to the printer?
It's, well, it's a digital file, so it's, I don't know, not that big a file really, but
They enlarge it?
they enlarge it to print it up at the size that I want to, yeah. Okay, so next slide. This is the first, some of these are going to be a little fuzzy because I took them with the iPhone. These are works in progress. I like to have a record of how the work looks as I go along. But you can see the difference between what's upstairs and this. This is the original, the first time I worked on it. And I was at Ragdale at this time in November of last year. I had a fellowship there to stay for 2 weeks as an artist in residence, which was completely heavenly. They take really, really good care of artists there, and someone rings the bell and dinner's ready, and that's all you have to do is show up. It's just ideal. I had a studio where I could work all day and all night if I wanted to, or just walk around the beautiful grounds. It's up in Lake Forest, Illinois. A lovely place to visit if you're ever up there. Just ring the bell. Let's see, next slide, please. And there I am, looking very happy at Ragdale, with the painting behind me. And this is a photo by Jessica Templitz, who is also there at the time, photographer. But you can see the scale of it at this point is, it's behind me. I'm starting to work in some of the areas in color and collaging other areas. Next slide, please. So this is to show you just a wall at the studio. This little colorful piece down below is part of a painting which I did and didn't like that well. So I cut it up and put it in a drawer, and when I need some collage material, I can go through this collection of work which all has the same basic materials. It's all based on digital print and then painted on top of, so I can include that and start to build up more layers. The next slide will show you detail of how much there is digital, how much there is painted, how much there is collaged and drawn on top.
When you're painting, are you still doing flat, or are you?
This piece, yes, I was doing on the wall. So it was hanging on the wall, and I was drawing and painting standing up. When I pour paint, I often put the whole piece on the floor so that I can control the pour and move it around.
All those little squiggles are hand-drawn?
Yes, all the squiggles are hand-drawn,
Oh my God.
and this is very close to the painting, obviously, because I'm right up there with the camera. Next slide, please. You can see the pen work, this blue, all the color is hand applied, so any paint, any color you see, and then any of that drawing is hand drawn. And I use an awful lot of glue to hold all this stuff down. Next slide, please. This is a very close-up. You can see the layers of the mylar prints with this jaggedy edge is the machine-drawn line, and then this smooth edge is my painted line, and the overlapping. And I love looking at maps and the topographic contour maps of landscape. I think that plays a part in it. And I also like how these kind of look organic, like they might be under a microscope somewhere. You might be seeing something moving. The next slide, please. This is just to show you paint strokes next to the digital. So this is a close-up of an area which is probably about this big. Next slide, please. This one, I really like this image. So on its own, extracted from the painting, I think it's a very strong image. What I'm going to do with that, I'm not sure. I mean, the work that I do is recursive, so I could take this and print it out and make it another painting. Or I could paint this image separately based on what I did here. Make it huge, make it, who knows what I'm going to do with it. But using the tools and the technology, I can investigate these pieces of my previous work and then extend them in different directions. Okay. The next slide is the painting in my studio in January. And it's, as you can see, it's evolved a lot. I'm starting to work in bigger color fields and do more collaging in the areas of the composition where I want to build it up. But over here, you can see the heart-shaped piece. It's painted on the back so that the lighter areas project from the canvas or the mylar. Next slide, please. Yeah, you can see a little bit more of what's going on there. So I'm collaging pieces. The big blue areas are from a different painting. They're poured on mylar and then cut out. The dark area at the top is one of those digital prints of the photograph that I just applied with directly.
What kind of paint are you using when you're pouring?
It's all acrylic.
Oh, okay.
Next slide, please. This is just to reference again that little area in the photograph that I sort of latched onto. And this was one of the first pieces of the painting that I finished that I liked. I liked the way it looked, I liked the way it felt. There was this sort of drippiness that kind of worked with the idea. Let's see. Next slide, please. That's the detail. So you can see the painting, the blue at the top is actually painted on the back of the mylar, and then the white drawing on top of the image is done with oil pastel. So I've got lots of different materials that are working together, and then the oil pastel acts as a relief if I put acrylic or water-based material on top of it. So I get a lot of nice effects just working with the materials. Next slide. Another detail of that side of the painting. The next one. A close-up. You can see the poured paint and how it spreads and how that is overlaid onto the digital material. Next slide. This is February of this year. I'm blocking out the color fields, and I'm starting to use more and less opaque paint. The white areas, I'm using two kinds of paint. The zinc white is a transparent white, and the titanium white is an opaque white. So knowing that it was going to be hanging in the atrium and that I would have light coming through, I wanted to make sure that there were areas that were completely translucent and then areas that were blocked. So that's another challenge that I set up for myself, to try to work imaginatively on both sides of the painting at the same time. The other thing that happened about this time is that I started to think of words and titles and how I could incorporate those kinds of symbols into the piece. Next slide, please. This is the next point at which I start to use these big letters. And the next one. And these are cut out of different kinds of materials. I'll paint a big piece of something and then trace these letters and cut them out and apply them. Next slide, please. And as it evolved, it started to speak to me of the universe. And so the title became UU Universe, YOU Universe, or YOU Universe, or any number of different ways that you can read the title. You can also see here in this piece some tape. I use a lot of tape to hold things in place as I'm constructing the painting, and then go back and glue. The next slide, another detail. So there are many, many layers built up with paint and drawing and glue and collage. The next one, please. This is the back of the painting as I was finishing up with the reverse side, trying to figure out how much I wanted to make opaque and how much I wanted to make translucent. And the next slide. It's a detail of that big Y. Next, please. And the back with a partly painted, partly collaged piece of color. This blue, next please. The blue was something I had really wanted to work with for a while. I couldn't figure out what it was that I was so attracted to, why I was so attracted to the blue. And next slide, please. But I just had not used a blue like that in a while, so I wanted to try it. Next slide. These are the finishing layers of the painting. Next, please. You can see the overlapping sheets of mylar as well as a lot of painting and drawing. Next. Pouring. And next. And next. Here we are, back out in the atrium. Next, please. And a close-up of the way that these things work in a translucent setting. And as I walked in this morning, it was great to see the architecture really has an impact on the piece as well. So the shadows of those trusses at the top of the atrium are casting these geometric forms onto the painting, which is really exciting. The big type has a similar effect. It organizes the space into a geometric structure. Next, please. And as I was looking at this blue, with the light coming through it, next slide, please. I realized that I had spent a whole lot of time with the Chagall windows recently at the Art Institute after they had been reinstalled. And I was just speaking to someone here in the audience about how everything that you see is stored in there, and it comes out in some way or another when you're an artist. And it's very interesting and wonderful for me to be working with these materials and see those kind of associations. It's just a treat. So next slide, please. This is the front and the back of UU Universe together, so you can see it at the same time from both sides. And that is the end of my talk. Thank you so much.